these were trans activists who hounded Nadhim Zahawi. Of course, he is the Education Secretary, and he was there to address a conference and a group of Conservative voters. He's allowed to do that. That's part of his thing. And there he was, and they've accused him of inciting hatred by defining women as an adult human female. Have a watch, stroke listen to this. The sounds of the middle classes. There it is. Tory scum. Come up with a new one, guys. Tory scum. Tory scum. Tory scum. Very nicely pronounced. Education Secretary was met by dozens of student protesters chanting Zahawi is a transphobe and Tory scum while visiting the University of Warwick. I don't even know where to start with this. The Cabinet Minister had to be ushered away by security guards in dramatic scenes as he was pursued by activists brandishing trans flags and placards. Today, it emerged that one of the students who led the protest was the son of the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and former Labour Minister Ed Balls, Joel Cooper. And we were wondering, well, it's interesting, he got his mum's name. Maybe in a sort of usurping of convention, he said, no. Mind you, if your name was going to be Joel Balls, then perhaps I can see why you might have opted for Cooper after all. Felix Fern is co-founder of the grassroots activism team Trans Activism UK. Felix, always good to speak. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. Listen, I love a protest. I think it goes right to the heart of what we're all about as, well, not just Brits, but living in a free world. Fantastic. But did they lose the room a little bit here? Firstly, by accusing Nadhim Zahawi of rather extreme crimes that he hadn't committed. And secondly, by kind of reverting to the old tired trope of Tory scum, which is not very kind, is it?
It might not be very kind, but if it walks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, I think it's probably quite accurate.
Why is Nadhim Zahawi scum?
I would say my opinion on that is more towards the party as a whole as opposed to him as a person. I don't know him personally. I do have some issues with individual things that he said that I do think could be quite dangerous towards marginalised communities. And ultimately, protesting is a human right. They were allowed to exercise it, and they did.
He's part of a marginalised community, if you want to look at it that way, of course.
Yeah, I'm part of various different marginalised communities. It doesn't mean that I can't be horrific towards another.
Well, horrific is a big word, I have to say, Felix. I mean, give me an example of this horror show that's being played out by the Conservatives as you see it.
Well, if we're going to speak about him as an individual, there's the issue of his encouraging that trans students be outed as trans or LGBTQ+ to their parents, which I know to some people, especially certain adults who may not know a lot about being a queer youth, sounds like a sensible thing. They want to know what's going on in their children's lives. They want to know about it. However, if you don't know what those parents are like, things like that are what lead to children being kicked out of their homes.
I can't imagine Nadhim Zahawi has said that we should out people.
He has trivialised it and suggested that parents should know that their children are transgender.
If your 7-year-old kid suddenly says they want to be identified as Julie, then I think the school has a responsibility to tell the parents, don't they?
It's a difficult question.
Yes, no, it's not. Yes is the word you're looking for, Felix.
No, I don't agree.
So you keep that secret. So your child wants to change their sex, and you don't think it's appropriate to tell the parents or discuss it with the parents?
I think it depends on what that child says. You said 7 years old. 7-year-olds will say a lot of things.
Correct.
If the child seems like they're in distress and there are serious issues, yes, you discuss that with a parent as you would literally anything.
Sure.
If a child randomly says one day, I'm another gender, I would just probably be like, okay, carry on.
Just take me to the wider point, then, of the Conservative Party, because, you know, there is a view that the Conservatives are you know, kind of playing one card and making it look as if they're on the side of, you know, organisations like your own, but actually simultaneously giving a big green light for industry, commerce to do whatever they want with pronouns, whether it's childbirth or issues around how you phrase the word like breastfeed, all of that stuff is all happening under the Tories as well. So where is this rabid transphobia happening?
A lot of it has been things like a failure to deliver on promises of change, such as promises that were made all the way back with Theresa May that simply never come to fruition, like changes to the Gender Recognition Act. There has been a rise in hate crimes towards trans and marginalised people in the UK, and I think it's very naive to suggest that the government that oversees our country wouldn't play a hand in that.
Why would they? What have you heard any minister say, though, that would get a Daily Telegraph reader to roll up their newspaper and whack you over the head with it because they were so outraged by what they'd read?
Strangely enough, I don't actually keep a folder of everything that every minister says. So unfortunately, I can't give you direct
more
quotes.
the mood. I mean, you're defending the right to, you know, shout Tory scum, which is, you know, it's a bit unpleasant in the kind of kinder politics that we were told the left want to advocate. So there's that. But it would be good to get a taster, if you like, of specifically what any government minister has done recently that would lead somebody to attack a trans person in the street.
Did you witness the recent parliamentary debate on the legal recognition of non-binary people?
Because I would have seen bits of it, yes.
That was horrific. That consisted of at least 3 MPs treating non-binary people as paedophiles, which was horrific. They were accusing trans people of grooming children. They were completely going away from the actual topic of the debate to speak about trans women and trans people in spaces that had nothing to do with the debate. It was incredibly upsetting.
But I can remember people making some sort of analogous comments that, you know, might not have been their cleverest moment. But I'm also aware, I don't remember specifically, I just remember reading the headlines, Felix, that some ministers or some speakers had upset people. But of course, that's a non-binary issue, and, you know, the jury is massively out on what the heck non-binary is, if it's a thing at all.
Well, it is a thing. I am that thing. Non-binary is something that comes under the gender spectrum as a whole. I'm not going to be...
But what I'm saying is psychologists and psychiatrists still struggle to fully define what that is. I mean, I sometimes don't feel like a, you know, I don't know. And help me out on this. I don't always feel like a bloke. I don't feel like a woman either, because I don't know what that would feel like, because I'm not a woman. I'm a bloke, obviously. So would that make me a bit non-binary?
I would say that depends on how you associate with it. My sister, for example, is someone I would probably call a cis woman, but she doesn't always feel specifically like a woman, but she's happy to call herself that. That makes her very happy. That's all that matters. The fact is that gender fluidity has existed over thousands of years in every community. It's not something that necessarily has to be defined in order to ensure that people feel included and validated. Several other countries have made legal moves so that people just feel recognised on a little bit of paperwork, which harms no one, but the UK is behind on that.
But how far do we kind of, you know, we talk about changing language and losing terms like ladies and gentlemen, which literally no one on planet Earth has ever seriously been offended by, but for some reason it's a good idea to get boys and girls can't exist, breastfeeding can't exist, all of this stuff. No sane person, Felix, including yourself, thinks that's okay.
I think that language develops and changes, and should do. I think that it does no harm to include everyone. You are not erasing one person by including another, and to suggest otherwise means that we stay still in time and never develop.
Well, we do. When you say we never develop, trans people have lived, you know, I've never known a world without trans people in it. It was never, I think in 20 years, I've never ever done a debate about trans issues up until 2 years ago. Literally, seriously, it was never a thing. Somehow, identity politics, intersectionality, all of that has become a big thing. It's politically driven, and that's how we end up with Nadhim Zahawi being called Tory scum, right? That's ultimately.
And have those conversations ever actually be centred on things that trans people are concerned about, or is it on topics that people are claiming are dangerous or to do with trans people? No one's ever having these debates about trans healthcare and the fact that people are waiting 5 to 6 years for a first appointment. No one's doing these debates on the fact that trans people are dying as a result of a lack of healthcare. Instead, they're having these debates on, oh no, someone said you shouldn't say breastfeeding, how terrible. Yeah. That's not actually important. What's important is acknowledging the fact that trans people are literally dying.
Well, it's not important to necessarily have your first counselling compared to somebody who's got terminal cancer if you play that game, obviously. Listen,
no one's saying that.
Okay.
That's such a nonsensical false claim to make.
Well, I was
picking
up on what you were saying.
Is not denying someone
else. Well, you're not. No one's denied healthcare. You're not denied healthcare because you're trans or non-binary.
A lot of people are. There are people who have died as a result of a lack of healthcare, such as trans men who have been seen by emergency services that have refused to treat them because they're not sure whether the person has a uterus or not, even if they tell them that they do. Right. People have died.
I'm not going to take an anecdote from you, I'm afraid, Felix, without getting it fully checked. But I thank you for your time as ever. Felix Fern